This one started as an advent calendar during the holiday season, but really this is something that we'll probably use year-round because it's just an apothecary cabinet. But the other thing I wanted to explore with this was to see if I could get all of these snowflake designs laser cut into the face, but they wouldn't fit, the whole board wouldn't fit on my laser cutter, so they had to be cut in sections and still match up. That was the other challenge in building this one. But this is how I build it. My name is Tyson. Welcome to Geeks Woodshop.
The case for this was built from cherry, and most of it was taken from a single board. So, cue that sweet, sweet milling montage. So the case is built from 1/2-inch outer boards with 3/8-inch interior slats, and just to make things interesting, I wanted to try some dovetails and through mortise joinery. After cutting the boards to final length, I started with the dovetails. I've been experimenting with some Tablesaw dovetail jigs, and that's a process that needs its own video to explain, so I'll leave it for another day. Tablesaw dovetails are not a new idea, but I'm still figuring out the process, so this was a bit nerve-wracking. These dovetails, they turned out pretty well, though the pins at the end of the board were pretty thin, and as a result, I split one of them, so had to administer some woodworking first aid. Tablesaw dovetails still require some cleanup by hand, and these aren't perfect, but they are the best results I've had so far. For the top of the case, I used through mortise and tenons, and the mortises were drilled and chopped out by hand. And I cut the tenons primarily with the table saw, as the layout for these was symmetrical, so I could set up a cut and then just flip the board. As simple as that should be, I did mess up a board by cutting on the wrong side of the line, so don't do that unless you've milled up lots of extra boards. With the outer case joinery done, I could turn my attention to the dividers. I'm cutting the dados with my regular saw blade, so I did a bit of testing to find the right spacers that would make it easy to cut the correct width with 2 or 3 passes. I found that one of the box sides plus some cardstock made for a good fit. The vertical dividers also needed dados cut, really shallow dados, just enough to create a slight shelf. To finish the case, I curved the top boards and added a backing board to the top with a sort of handle in it.
Quick side note, you do have to be careful carrying it by the handle. It likes to tip forward and then all the drawers fall out.
So I pre-finished the various boards before gluing, as it would be pretty difficult to apply finish to all those small cubbies. And when pre-finishing, just remember to tape off what will be your glue surfaces. The final dividers were still a little wide, and these were cut to width for each section. In theory, the sections should be equal, but in reality, they were slightly different, especially that center board. The boxes were cut earlier in the process from some thin ply, so you've seen these showing up already. Now the boxes were lightly sanded and I didn't even bother finishing them, just wanted to smooth any rough or sharp edges.
So the case is done and the boxes are done, and it just needs, I wanted to do box fronts. Part of the driving idea behind this whole thing was to have this whole face that was going to have these laser cut decorations on them. So I need to cut that, and I took that wider board, I've resawn it and surfaced it, and so it's a nice book match. And I will cut that into the drawer faces. Probably the only person who's ever going to notice or care that it happens to be book matched. So let's do that.
It was a challenge keeping the order of the drawer fronts correct. For etching the cherry wood, I did a number of tests and still was getting a bit of mixed results, but in the end, using a template on my Glowforge, I burned the designs into the drawer fronts. With all the laser etched fronts, I didn't want to cover the snowflake designs with handles, so instead I embedded magnets in each drawer. I found some magnets that were thin enough, and using a router bit rather than a drill bit, I could create a flat hole that completely encases the magnets I'll use. And a simple setup made drilling the drawer fronts easy and consistent. Now, after all the work to get to this point, I was pretty worried about getting the boxes lined up correctly with the drawer faces. So I grabbed some scrap boards and nailed up a simple jig to hold the drawer front and box in place while the glue sets. Used a few spring clamps and some super glue in the center surrounded by wood glue for a permanent attachment. Just had to be careful that the magnet direction was consistent. And so to open the boxes, I turned a simple knob and then glued in a magnet. And then, bonus, as an advent calendar, that knob keeps track of which day is next.
So this was fun. I'd love to know what you think. Please let me know in the comments. And thank you for watching. Till next time, cheers.